So if you try to answer the question, is direct response the right model, to deal with our market challenges, you will see that only 12% in the US market are clicking on ads. So we are basing our business model, our KPIs, our reports and everything on something that is only true for quite close in the future, less than 10% of the audience which see our ads. So I think it's obvious, that we have to fix that. That is simply not something that will work in the future. And therefore, we have to think it over, and click rates are still falling. There are other sources as well. And here comes one of the interesting facts. If you talk about click rates, not only in terms of are people clicking, is it declining or growing, or how can we improve that? But if you sit back and say, what does an advertiser who wants to introduce a hair coloration product expect us to do? They expect us to grow sales in the market, in the supermarket. And how does that happen? By clicking? No, because usually if you click, you're not suddenly in a supermarket. It works by reaching people's minds, and that's something known as, purchase intent, or classical measures that have to be supported by our campaigns. So we think that for many reasons, the time for counting clicks is kind of over. They're disappearing, and more importantly, they're not supporting many kind of advertisers' needs. So we have to find something else which much more goes down the mental click. If we want to help this consumer going into the supermarket the next morning and buying that hair coloration product, we have to reach his mind. We have to make him remembering the brand and having sympathy and driving the sales. So clicks won't work if we want to reach that. And this fancy graph should show you, what we should not do. There is one big problem that we could run into, which we really should avoid, and that is, simply saying, well, this direct marketing concept, the direct response thing, we have been doing so well over the last few years. Why shouldn't we simply apply that for branding purposes as well? So, the hair coloration guy comes and we say, well, we are so good in counting clicks. It's so impressive, so, reliable. Everyone can do that. We simply do that for you as well. So you run your hair coloration campaign, we count the clicks, and if we are able to improve that, you can trust me, people will buy your product in the supermarket. And everyone, with a background of marketing and research knows that's the wrong assumption. We should not use the concepts here to support that, to run branding campaigns, because the whole idea of branding is something else. It's a different point in the funnel. We have to reach people's minds, and the clicks will not be the right measure, and direct response is not the right concept to support that, to go down that road. So we thought we should be able to apply the classical mechanisms, brand sympathy, purchase intent, to the problem. And this is what we did. And there you can see, that this is pretty much German engineering, or it looks like that. But the idea is kind of straight, because you can think of that like, here's a user and here is the ad we want to show, and we simply replaced the means of optimization and making things work by getting away from the click and getting market research into that. Because how can we reach people's minds, or how can we detect whether we have been able to that? Has anyone ever solved that problem in the past? The answer is yes. Market research has been doing for decades, quite a good job in figuring out whether you reach people's minds, whether brand sympathy is growing, whether awareness is there. It's not a new problem. It's only new for us, the fancy online guys who always think everything is new, what we do, and everything is groundbreaking and rocket science. In fact, this part of the problem was not new. There are classical concepts, the idea of measuring whether someone likes a product or not, and whether that figure improved is something well known to the research community. So what we did is, with the brand engagement measurement, we simply come with a small piece of research which goes along with the campaign, and ask, do you like the product? Do you remember the product? Would you be interested in buying the product? That's the whole thing. And we use the feedback from that instead of the click. That's all what that fancy picture wants to tell you. And of course, it seems like a fancy, we did that and replaced it here and so on, and you simply have to trust us. No. What is perfectly clear, that in the online industry, we will never get away with simply selling trust-based. It's like, this is a fancy branding product, it will work, believe me. That's not how the industry works. We always are going into measurement. If we promise brand sympathy will go up, we have to show that it really goes up. And we did a lot of case studies together with impressive clients that show that it really works. Like brand awareness, purchase intent, sympathy. No, there's no sympathy. So brand awareness and purchase intent, a lot of case studies, independent case studies, which impressively show that this concept really, really works and improves the right KPI which the advertiser expects to be improved. So this one is, and I'm not saying, that it has to be done exactly like that, but I personally really believe that if we want to be able to attract television budgets and to solve the problems brand advertising has, we have to come with concepts of that kind. We have to deal with the mental click and how to reach people's minds and how to prove that we did it and how to optimize based on that. So that's what I wanted to tell with this part of the presentation. In the second part, I am trying to answer another interesting question, which is obviously related to the first part, but has not been answered frequently in the past, which is to what extent this kind of audience buying, targeting, getting away from the channel approach works in terms of, is it better, is it worse, how does it perform if you compare it directly? To go there, I have to explain how we work for media agencies, because it's important to understand. So besides the fact that the targeting system usually is coming from the publisher side, so I said we started with Extrabladet and added other publishers, so we are publisher-centric approach. It obviously is important to, at one day, interface to agencies as well. So we are working with a lot of agency networks which use this kind of infrastructure and technology to drive their campaigns. And of course, it can be explained with the fancy acronyms. You showed some impressive ones, so I will use those two: the SSP and the DSP thing. It's all about where you're sitting. Whether you are kind of owned and controlled by media agencies, then you will be more or less called a DSP, or whether you're coming from the publisher side, and then you will be a supply side platform. And we at nugg.ad, we're trying to deal with that problem in a slightly different way by having interfaces for agencies without being a DSP, and acting on behalf of the publishers without only being an SSP. So we're somehow trying to be something in between. And just to talk about, the solutions behind. I explained the branding solutions. Of course, we have the data piece as well, as you can imagine. That's an important one. And perhaps importantly, the content solutions, because I expect that the same mechanisms and technologies that we nowadays apply for AdWords, to make them more relevant and more specific, will in the future be applied for content as well, due to obvious reasons. And therefore, think of a landing page that knows who is landing on that page and adopts a little bit and so on. So that's what we call content solutions. But coming back to how does an advertiser benefit from this kind of technology? Obviously, it's less wastage. So he reaches his. That's the idea of audience buying, is reaching through to your audience pretty much directly and reduce the wastage you have. And of course, the cross-publisher thing is a very important one as well. So not having to deal with 20 different publishers and making your specifications and dealing with this and that, but running the campaign almost cross-publisher with frequency capping, boosting, and all these kind of freaky things being applied across the publishers. That's an important requirement nowadays as well, and we can deal with that. And if you look at it from the other side, what the advertiser's direct benefit is, of course, he has an individual branding campaign, so the hair coloration guy might be interested in people who are, coloring their hair, for example, so you could do something like that, add a piece of research and be more specific in how you run the campaign, and of course get insights, reports, and this kind of stuff, which is tells an interesting story as well. So as I promised, in the last part of my presentation, I will go and describe this case study, which is quite fresh and has not been published frequently. We just came out with that some weeks ago. And perhaps some of you can imagine why this happens, because we are not known as, not having case studies. We have tons of them. But there is a specific reason, obviously, why something like that has not been researched, because it's quite a tricky thing, both in terms of research setup, but also obviously because of political reasons. If you compare the channel, the classical channel, high-price channel booking with the targeting. And honestly, I must say, from the side of a targeting provider, we were also a little bit scared because we didn't want to fail on that, So we were quite interested in that. So the idea is, this is the channel idea. You pretty well know that. The idea that specific content attracts specific audiences. So if you want to go to the audience, you take the content, like a bypass to get what you want to get. But something that works pretty well, we shouldn't underestimate that. It's not a spooky trick, some sales guys wanted to introduce into the market. That's how a whole industry works, and works quite well and delivers good results. Therefore, it's a good and very interesting to ask question whether we can be as good as that or even better. So the idea was, would we be able, with a targeting campaign, to deliver higher target group share than the classical channel approach? And that's the guys that wanted to find that out. It was L'Oreal. I think it's a hair. No, it's not a color. It's a hair cleaning product, but close to that. Media agency, obviously, Vivaki Z Digital was involved, and a well-known research company, because we wanted to have it completely independently evaluated whether it worked. And this is the campaign that we used. So the audience we wanted to reach were men aged 20 to 29. We used, or the research company used, an online panel to check to what extent the audience was reached. We used, it was pretty much a video campaign, so a lot of video ads and interstitials, 9 million impressions, and the whole thing was cross-publisher, so four big German publishers were involved in delivering those ad impressions. The research question, as I said, was, who is able to reach effectively, reach the intended audience? Because that is something, we really have to tell, and we have to be honest about, both the channel side and the targeting side, that both are not delivering 100% audiences. That's, if you say, you take Börsen, and make a print AdWord in that, you would expect only to reach people with high income and perhaps 90% male and stuff like that. But if you would measure, how many people took